Welcome to the first annual Irreverent Film Festival, coming to you live from Manhattan Beach Studios. I'm your host, Mark Nicholas, and tonight we celebrate independent films that broke rules, ignored notes, crossed lines, and somehow still got released. Films that were willing to make audiences uncomfortable on purpose, and honestly, we love that. Because, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between, in a world so inherently offensive, artists, the least threatening of them all, are still told to be careful, or societal judgment shall be brought down upon them. We believe the opposite. Great art requires a willingness to take risk, great humor even more so. And if the world pulls no punches, art shouldn't either. Because irreverence is not a crime. It challenges assumptions, pokes at sacred cows, and finds humor in places usually reserved for teenage boys and late-night chats. It's protected by our Constitution, theoretically at least, and we think that if it makes people laugh, think, argue, even on the ride home, it's doing its job. We don't believe anything, subject only, of course, to a handful of exceptions, should be off limits. Race, sex, politics, age, body type, or bad words, because if you can't face the sensitive spots in life, you can't grow past them. You can't discuss them. You can't educate and be educated. Here, no one gets canceled. You might get booed, you might offend, you might get debated, and sure, you might be wrong. But you give it your best, and then we ask for only one thing, that you go home and you make something even bolder next time. So let's loosen your grip, lighten your judgment, and help us celebrate films that probably shouldn't have worked, but did. Welcome, future Apology Tour participants. This is the Irreverent Film Awards. Let's kick this off with our first category of 2025, the most irreverent use of cannibalism. Our first nominees answer the question no one asked, but cinema absolutely insisted on exploring. Because sometimes horror isn't about monsters. Sometimes it's just about a good meal. Tonight's nominees looked at one of humanity's oldest taboos. Our nominees are Boca de Asno, directed by Carlos Calvera Tome. Set in the middle of a coronavirus lockdown, our protagonist wakes up hungry, very hungry. And what begins as another soul-crushing day slowly unravels into something quite a bit darker. And our second nominee is De Niño a Cucurbitacillo, From Child to Cucurbit, or Melon, directed by Gabriel Escobar Martin. Our lead is a new father whose child turns into a watermelon. What follows is a bit unsettling and a darkly comedic meditation on parenthood, responsibility, and the unthinkable question, what do you do when the thing you love becomes edible? Both films prove that cannibalism in the right hands can be metaphorical, philosophical, and uncomfortable. And the Irreverent Media Award for Most Irreverent Use of Cannibalism goes to De Niño a Cucurbitacillo, a bold, absurd, and disturbing, and incredibly creative film. Today we celebrate melons and director Gabriel Escobar Martin. Our next award honors a very specific cinematic trick, the kind that sneaks up on you, tightens your strings, and then somehow leaves you painfully smiling or groaning. This is the award for films that make you laugh, wince, or quietly rethink your relationship with your parents, all in under 10 minutes. The nominees for Best Painful Cry with a Smile are Pius, directed by Oscar Campos and Paula Velez. A film about a teenager suffocating under constant conflict with his father, discovers a strange and anonymous way to make some extra money, selling photos of his feet online. And our second nominee, Descamar, Shedding, directed by Nicolau Araujo, is a story about a young Gabby who one day wakes up with the feeling that something inside her is changing. A delicate, haunting, coming-of-age story about growth, identity, and the complicated relationship between parent and child. Told with limited restraint, beauty, and yet a quiet emotional power. Both films remind us that growing up isn't loud. It's subtle, uncomfortable, and sometimes pretty devastating. And the Irreverent Media Award for Best Cry with a Smile goes to Pius, for finding tenderness, humor, and humanity in the most unexpected places, and leaving us misty-eyed and yet a tiny bit hopeful. And now it's time for the most irreverent death. This next category proves that nothing is off limits. When filmmakers are brave, reckless, and just self-aware enough to kill, in a world where we don't actually know whether turning your child into a melon constitutes a baby's death, here we know that these poor souls did die. These nominees didn't just flirt with the final curtain, they tripped over it, dragged it into the living room, and asked it to sign a release form. The nominees for Most Irreverent Death are Snuff Short, directed by Antonio Jose Lopez Gomez, a black comedy where ambition far exceeds competence. Here, death includes a bit of fame, money, and torture, a little bit of some inept acting and production skills. And next is The Nest, with director Ignacio Rodo, a film about bringing the love of your life home. Just keep it really quiet. And Feliz Suicidio, directed by Cesco Murillo Magallon. In this darkly comedic and surprisingly tender film, a young man struggling with addiction discovers that his greatest fear isn't dying, it's dying alone. And the winner of Best Irreverent Death is Snuff Short. Congratulations to Antonio Jose Lopez Gomez and the entire team behind Snuff Short. Congratulations.
Hey you guys, it's Claudia. You probably know me from the endless emailing, updates, and reaching out. I'm so happy to be here. I loved all the films. They were hilarious, awkward, and just... Our next category celebrates intimacy that refuses to be subtle, polite, or quietly fade to black. These films understood that sex on screen isn't just about bodies. It's about power, awkwardness, danger, timing, and occasionally very bad decisions. Or maybe sex is really just about sex. The nominees for Most Irreverent Sex Scene are The Nest, a film about bringing the love of your life home and discovering that intimacy gets complicated when comfort, vulnerability, and emotional baggage all share the same roof. Sexy, strange, and just uncomfortable enough to be a little too real. Next, Olentezori Escatu Neon, I Already Asked Santa, a story about passion, connection, sex, and the kind of conversation that starts sweet and ends somewhere quite different. And finally, Juguete de Placer, Pleasure Toy, a seductive thriller involving a murderous flight attendant, an unsuspecting Italian passenger, and a hotel room where desire, danger, and judgment all check in, but only one can check out. And the Irreverent Media Award for Most Irreverent Sex Scene goes to Olentezori Escatu Neon, I Already Asked Santa.
And now it's time for Best Actor. These actors leaned into discomfort, vulnerability, obsession, and absurdity, and they trusted us to follow them there. No safety nets. The nominees for Most Irreverent Actor are Mauro Velez for Peace. With innocence and vulnerability, Mauro invites us directly into his discomfort. His performance doesn't explain itself. It lets us experience the emotion as it unfolds, awkward, exposed, and deeply human. And Inigo Salinero for Mierda, a blisteringly intense portrayal of a struggling screenwriter, convinced his great work is just one moment away. Obsessive, volatile, and painfully self-aware, his performance captures creative desperation with frightening precision. And Tomas Montoya for De Niño a Cucurbitacillo. In a story where a child turns into a watermelon, Tomas grounds the absurd in emotional truth. We feel every beat of love, conflict, denial, and indecision, proof that even the strangest premise lives or dies by belief. And the Irreverent Film Festival Award for Best Actor goes to Tomas Montoya for De Niño a Cucurbitacillo, for giving us a performance that made the surreal feel devastatingly real and scary, and it reminded us that irreverence works best when it's anchored in some form of truth. Congratulations.
This next award honors performances which didn't play it safe, didn't smooth the edges, and definitely didn't ask permission. These actresses gave us characters who were messy, fearless, vulnerable, and unforgettable. Performances that leaned fully into discomfort and found something deeply human on the other side. The nominees for Best Actress are Tania Fornieles, Olentezori Escatu Neon. This performance bursts with passion and intensity, moving effortlessly through the wildest of emotions. Tanya lays herself bare, revealing contradiction, longing, and fragility, and reminding us how powerful passion can be when nothing is held back. Magdalena Huberman for Juguete de Placer, Pleasure Toy. This performance made you feel and squirm. She's magnetic and unsettling. She commanded every moment, pulling the audience into a dangerous intimacy that lingered long after the scene ended. And Jaise Suarez for Mejor Amigo, a deceptively quiet performance built around a shared dinner and an intimate conversation. Through restraint, honesty, and emotional precision, she reveals the rawest corners of humanity, a metaphor for the entire human condition, seeking truth and the weight of knowing, and of course, the danger of being fully seen. And the Irreverent Film Festival Award for Best Actress goes to Jaise Suarez for Mejor Amigo. Her subtlety, bravery, and devastating authenticity. Congratulations, Jaise Suarez.
And now it's time for our Lifetime Film Achievement Awards. Blazing Saddles weaponized irreverence, challenging the sacred idols of Hollywood and America. It attacked racism by refusing to be polite about racism and everything else. It used words that shouldn't be used. It broke the fourth wall. It challenged the artificiality of Hollywood with its reveal of sets and walls separating the West from the soundstage and Hollywood from you. And it trusted the audience to get the joke. It didn't condescend, it didn't pull punches, and it laid it all out there. And the rest really was up to us. Today we celebrate the greatest irreverent films of all time. Those that sought to make a difference by pushing boundaries, inappropriate laughter, sorry for the judgment, and finding new ways of telling us the story. And of course, trusting that we were smart enough to understand what the film was trying to do. This year's Lifetime Achievement Awards goes to Dr. Strangelove, Stanley Kubrick's dark comedy about nuclear annihilation. Irreverent, absurd, and terrifyingly funny, turning the end of the world into satire gold. With respect to the current imbalanced world, this 1964 gem couldn't be more timely. And our second inductee goes to This Is Spinal Tap. This mockumentary broke the fourth wall of music culture. Silly, irreverent, relentlessly spot on in satirizing ego and fame. And we honor the amazing Rob Reiner, who brought this all to us in such an original form. And our third inductee, the Rocky Horror Picture Show, celebrating sexual liberation and all of its absurdity. Audiences don't just watch, they participate in the rebellion. In honor of its 50th anniversary, congratulations to Rocky Horror Picture Show and the inclusion of these three incredible, meaningful, important films as the newest members of the Blazing Saddles Lifetime Achievement Award.
And now it brings us great pleasure to discuss our film screening. Our top selections of 2025, about 15 or so, will be screened on February 6th. So be sure to sign up and join us for the event. It's going to be so fun, so irreverent. There will be so many laughs. And thank you guys again for joining us and for everything, for submitting, and just for being you.
And now it's time for the Best Irreverent Short Film of 2025. Thank you all for tuning in to this inaugural year. We've been overwhelmed at the amazing work done globally in 2025. You know, it's an irreverent world, and we've seen some pretty irreverent art. And we look forward to so much more to come here in 2026. You've seen our selections for the screenings. They're all nominees for Best Film. The Irreverent Film Festival Committee has been hard at work to finalize our creme de la creme selection, our own Palme d'Or. After a great deal of deliberation, the Best Irreverent Short Film of 2025 goes to Olan Zaruri Eskatu Neon, I Already Asked Santa, by director Aamia San Sebastian. Congratulations.